citizens. Thank you, and I now allow me to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, ambassadors, honorable guests. At the outset, I would like to extend all thanks and appreciation to President Sisi for the warm reception in this part of the world. Thank you for the generous hospitality, and it is with pleasure that I stand by your side in Egypt, a great country which is deemed a strategic and historic partner to France. During this visit, I would like to touch upon the bonds of friendship and cooperation, and I will also renew our intention to continue to stand by side to achieve more prosperity. In this journey you chose to adopt, I am delighted that our bonds have crystallized in the signing of strategic partnership agreement of today. I personally will continue to support this strategic partnership side by side with you. I reiterate that France is adamant on maintaining Egypt's stability within the deteriorating situation in the Middle East, as the Egyptian economy continues to face difficulties. France will continue to support Egypt's conversations with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund for providing the necessary financial support to Egypt, in addition to facilitating the implementation of all the necessary reforms. During my meeting today with His Excellency, we discussed a number of means of cooperation in addition to the context of the current crisis. In terms of the mutual cooperation, your Mr. President, that stated that it is based on our firm conviction and desire to stand side by side with Egypt. We are standing by Egypt in support of their 2030 vision, supporting their cooperation and also their partnership with Europe. This morning, we reiterated our commitment to continuing supporting the financial support for the implementation of priority projects which will contribute to Egypt's development and prosperity. And I here commend the National Development Agency of France, which is the main strategic partnership to Egypt, contributing to billions of dollars since 2006. 260 million euros of agreements have been signed, beneficial to the Egyptian people in many domains: transportation, energy, water, and sanitary sewage. Business conference will be also convened, which will cement and further bolster these means of cooperation. France is considered to be the top European investor beyond energy and gas, oil and gas sector, where more than 150 opportunities have been created. The domains of cooperation are numerous. I would like to mention just a few. Urban transportation, which is necessary to development in a city, a metropolitan city like Egypt, where the third line of the metro will be launched. We have been in this domain since 1984, and this commitment continues by renewing the logistics and riggings of the first line through 771 million euros of loans, in addition to the construction of the sixth line. Our corporations and companies are ready and prepared to go ahead. Also, the healthcare domain, and after signing the strategic partnership agreement in fighting cancer. Agreements were reached where French companies in the industrial domain. This will bolster our mutual cooperation. And in addition to the efforts made by both the countries in supporting the civilians in Gaza, a new protocol has been signed. A number of domains were also food industry, energy, service sector, and this afternoon a number of agreements will be signed with companies for the employment of young talents, Egyptian engineers. Also in the defense sector, it is part and parcel of this partnership. You were the first to purchase the French Rafale warplanes, followed by a number of countries. Also the naval support, defense support, we have a very strategic partnership which will be furthered in this visit. Both the additional Rafale planes will be delivered soon. Also, we have reinforced that signed agreements for cooperation in higher education and universities. The relevant commissions will convene and I will be personally present in this afternoon. The re-establishment of the France University in Egypt. We are concerned with the development of the Francophone Egypt, as an agreement was signed for the establishment of 100 schools and also for supporting and boosting the French language as the second language in it. We also signed the agreement for the cooperation in archaeology, and this afternoon I will be meeting with a number of artists concerned with the same. The orchestra, museums, artists, all these domains require further cooperation between our respective countries. And beyond that, we are speaking of a mutual vision of our countries with respect to the development in this region. I remember in the fall of 2023, following the terrorist attacks by Hamas on Israel, as we were on the same page, spoke of the same tone on this particular issue. Thank you again, Mr. President. It is a token for your token and for the delivery of the relief aid into Gaza. We condemn the continued Israeli attacks on Gaza and breach of the ceasefire. We also call for the immediate release of the Israeli captives, re-establishment of the ceasefire, and the unconditional release of the Israeli captives held by Hamas. Negotiations should be resumed immediately in a constructive manner without any delay. I also must commend the efforts made by Egypt for the re-establishment of the ceasefire and release of the captives. I join you in this. We are standing against the forcible transfer of any people out of their land, including Gaza. Also, the annexation of Gaza Strip or West Bank. It is an utter violation of the international law and constitutes a direct threat of the security of the entire region in its entirety, including Israel. I also support the Arab plan adopted on March 4th for the reconstruction of Gaza Strip, and I commend Egypt's efforts in this sphere. It is a realistic support to Gaza. It will pave the way for a new Palestinian administration of Gaza Strip. Hamas shall not be part of any rule in Gaza, nor Israel. Today, this morning and yesterday, I spoke to Your Excellency, and we will be joined by the Jordanian monarch, King Abdullah II, in these discussions. However, we are firmly convinced that the political venue is the only means to restore security and stability in Gaza and the entire region. We will continue to push in these directions within the international perspective for the establishment of two side-by-side states, and we will continue to work with you together with Saudi Arabia in this direction. We are partners with Egypt in this region, and we are concerned with the developments in the Red Sea, where the maritime navigation security must be maintained. The passage of vessels in the Suez Canal must continue. We seek a diplomatic solution to the Iranian nuclear crisis, and we spoke with you, Mr. President, that this represents a direct threat to the region. We are working with our partners to curb the Iranian nuclear ambitions, and also missile ambitions. Mr. President, you spoke about Syria, and I know you had the opportunity to speak about the transition in Syria with the Syrian president, and we support this process where all the components of the fabrics of the Syrian people will be involved, apart from any foreign intervention or undermining its stability. We also support and call for denouncing violence. The same applies to Lebanon, and you spoke to the same with the French President Aoun and the head of the government, Nawaf Salam. We are adamant to see Lebanon's security and territorial integrity safeguarded. It must restore sovereignty, where the Lebanese army with the UN peacekeeping forces be able to restore stability and security on their homeland, and also stand up to any terrorist attempts. We spoke about Sudan, Ethiopia, and within this context, Sudan will go into the third year of this crisis. It is now suffering the worst humanitarian catastrophe in the world. Let's not forget Sudan. Let's keep working together in order to have a settlement achieved and in order to see peace restored. More than 1 year has passed on Paris Peace Conference. We in France will not spare any effort when we speak of water security. This pivotal river, the River Nile, we should push forward towards the implementation of the existing agreements. All the basin countries must share the River Nile. With respect to Ukraine, we support all efforts aiming at ending the war, as supported by President Trump. We seek a permanent, lasting peace. It will be beneficial to all, including Europe. We are aware of the consequences of insecurity as a result of the Russian aggression on Ukraine. This has been much felt in the food security domain. That's why it is compelling for Russia to put an end to their delay tactics and to accept unconditional ceasefire. This was the proposal raised by President Trump and endorsed by the Ukrainian president in Jeddah more than a month ago. We believe that Russia has been delaying, procrastinating, has not offered a mutual consent. On the contrary, continues to target deep into Ukraine, and I commend the stand taken by Egypt. Also, you're voting in this respect, and the firmness you have demonstrated in all your actions. Sometimes we hear comments and reports. I have very shared and common ground with President Sisi in respect of Ukraine and Gaza. We have shared views. What is more important and commonly shared by both countries, that is the rejection of any dual standards. You know our position in terms of Gaza and Ukraine. When we defend peace, we defend it on all fronts. It is the common grounds we both share, Egypt and France. Thank you again, Mr. President, for the warm reception and the deep-rooted historical relations combine and bond both our countries and peoples, and will continue to be fueled by the numerous agreements signed today, and I'm certain that it will continue in the future.
Okay, you were just listening to a press conference being held by the French President Emmanuel Macron as well as the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi speaking in Cairo. The French President saying that he remains committed to Egypt's stability in an environment that is, according to him, getting more uncertain. So what we heard in the past few minutes or so is that the two presidents have announced that they've signed strategic partnerships in various areas, including transportation, health, as well as education. They also spoke about regional development, according to them, including countries like Syria, Lebanon, Sudan, Ethiopia, and, of course, Gaza. The two presidents saying they agree that any forced displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, according to them, is, quote, unacceptable. And Macron saying that France and Egypt condemn the resumption of strikes on Gaza, and they reaffirm calls for an immediate ceasefire as well as the release of hostages. Let's bring in Bernard Smith. Bernard, you were listening in. You're joining us from Paris. So a pretty wide-ranging press conference held by the reporters. What would you say was the takeaway message?
I mean, this was two statements delivered by Sisi and Macron, covering essentially bilateral relations between the two countries and signings of accords. It took them a while, both of them, to get to Gaza, but when they did, Macron, he said, were speaking with one voice with the Egyptian president. He said he's happy to be at your side, excuse me, and condemned, as the Egyptian president did, the resumption of Israeli airstrikes on Gaza, called for an immediate return to a ceasefire, and said that negotiations need to resume without delay. He acknowledged what he said was Egypt's unstinting effort to broker a peace agreement in Gaza, or to broker a ceasefire at least in Gaza, and he said a failure to do that was a grave threat for regional stability. Macron significantly, perhaps more significantly, goes tomorrow, Tuesday, to El Arish. That's 50 kilometres from the Gaza border, and is the centre of where the aid is sort of gathered for Gaza, and the aid workers are gathered for Gaza process before it goes in to Gaza. Very symbolic for a European leader to go there, but when Macron arrives, he's likely to find not an awful lot going on, and a lot of aid backed up, and aid workers with not much to do, because Israel has stopped allowing aid in to Gaza. Before that, he meets later this afternoon with King Abdullah of Jordan, as well as again with Sisi, to focus particularly on Gaza.
Okay, Bernard, thank you so much for that reporting from Paris. Around the world are in turmoil after the latest round of U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs. European stocks have fallen sharply. Germany's leading index, that's the DAX, fell around 10% at the start of trading on Monday. And earlier in Asia, Japan's Nikkei sunk to a 1.5-year low on opening before it recovered slightly. The South Korean market lost nearly 5%, and Taiwan stocks fell nearly 10%. Well, the global reaction follows last week's U.S. market tumble. That's as President Trump's policies were announced. And speaking on Air Force One, Trump defended his decision to impose the controversial levies.
We're the piggy bank. We have all the advantages. Forget markets for a second. We have all the advantages. We'll get it straight out. We're going to become a wealthy nation again. Wealthy like never before.
Okay, and this is how things looked just a short while ago in Europe. Indices in Germany, London, Amsterdam, and Spain, all, as you can see, experiencing falls. It follows drops in Asia, with markets there now closed. Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and Australia, all down. We have 4 correspondents covering the story across Europe and Asia. In a moment, we'll hear from Jessica Washington in Seoul and Katrina Yu in Beijing. Dominic Kane is in Berlin. But first, we bring in Hashim Ahelbara, who's joining us from Luxembourg. So, Hashim, I mean, we see the figures. European markets low. How are they faring at this hour?
Well, they've been sinking since the start of the day, a reaction to the stock markets in Asia, which have been also tumbling when you look at the stocks 50 and stocks 600, which are all about the key companies operating across Europe. You get a sense of a tumble of about 6%. They recovered slightly to something like, but they still remain tumbling by over 5.9%. The panic has resulted in a sell-off because most of the companies operating in the stock markets in Europe are not confident this is something that could be solved in any political settlement with the Trump administration, but also they are concerned about what could happen next and what would be the reaction of the central bank in Europe to try to diffuse the tension and solve this problem. Now, if you look at the indications from the European stock markets, this is the worst tumble since 2020, the fallout from the COVID-19, and people fear it could just even get worse in the upcoming days.
Okay, Hashim, thank you so much for...
That once things settle down and we get to the tariff negotiating table and get more clarity on the actual tariffs and other non-trade barriers, that the markets will settle down. But right now, I think there's just too much uncertainty.
Yeah, I mean, look, on top of the uncertainty and the market jitters that we're seeing, there's also uncertainty about Trump himself, right? And what he does next.
Yeah, I think that's a fair, that's a fair statement. I think the president hopefully comes out and makes another statement that can potentially calm the markets. This is just near-term volatility. I'm not sure it has any great effect on Main Street, on the real economy. And so, but when the markets continue to trade down, I think there is a point where it could have an effect on the real economy. If larger companies cannot issue equities or borrow money, the only silver lining of this is that interest rates are coming down, and that's really going to help the Treasury.
But you've been put forward by many investment firms. Look, Goldman Sachs saying, forecasting a 45% chance that the U.S. itself is going to fall into a recession over the next 12 months. Other Wall Street firms as well. JP Morgan saying that there's a 60% chance of a global economic downturn.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of speculation at this point. Tariffs haven't been used to this degree by the United States in a really long time. I hope that the markets start to understand that most of these tariffs were already in place. In other words, with our trading partners, it's only that the U.S. is starting to use them. So in many cases, they're reciprocal. I know there's some asymmetric situations right now that, perhaps some rates, that were higher than the rates being imposed on the Americans. But generally speaking, these are reciprocal or, many responses to existing tariffs that were in place. And I find, the complaints from many that Trump, President Trump started this trade war. In many respects, it was just a response. And I know a lot of the street firms are dialing down their expectations for the U.S. economy, but we haven't really seen a lot of evidence. When President Trump put the tariffs on China in his first term, there was literally no inflation, negligible inflation. 20% tariffs. I think prices went up under 1%. So most of the costs are not borne by the consumer. But I think a lot of the Wall Street firms are speculating that these tariffs can be inflationary, and I'm not sure there's really valid evidence of that.
We will have to wait and see how this all plays out. For the time being, Greg Swenson, thank you so much for joining us from London. Forces have killed at least 20 people in a number of strikes across the Gaza Strip. Several children were killed overnight in Khan Yunis in the south. The Israeli army also targeted a press tent next to Nasser Hospital, killing 2 Palestinians. A funeral has been held for the journalist who was killed in the attack on the tent. Helmi Al-Faqawi worked for the Palestine Today agency. 9 journalists have been injured. 2 are in critical condition after the tent was engulfed in flames. Gaza's media office says at least 210 Palestinian journalists have been killed by Israel since the start of the war in 2023. Camille Nedelik has the story. Just a warning, the images in her report are distressing.
After Israeli forces pledged to remove any threat to Israeli civilians, on Sunday night, multiple Palestinian children were maimed or killed in Israeli airstrikes. The UN estimates that since Israel resumed its war on Gaza, an average of 100 children have been killed each day.
We try to help as best we can the injured, to see who is still alive. And we're shocked to see that all of those martyred were children. Very few survived with injuries. All of those targeted were children. Here is my cousin. May God bless her soul. She is a child. All the ones they're targeting are children.
Israel bombed several homes in the southern area of Khan Yunis, killing families as they slept. The attacks came hours after Al-Qassam brigades fired rockets from Gaza into southern Israel, causing minor injuries to one person. But those rockets were fired from Deir al-Balah, elsewhere in the Strip. The military stepped up its ground incursion of Gaza last week, ordering displaced Palestinians out of Rafah, but not out of Khan Yunis, which has been repeatedly hit in recent days. Journalists as well as children are in the line of fire. A journalist died after Israeli forces attacked a press tent near Nasser Hospital. Several others were injured. The video here shows a journalist burning as witnesses scramble to help. He is sitting in a chair, still moving, but either too dazed or too injured to try to escape the burning fabric around him. Israel's war on Gaza has killed Journalists as well as children are in the line of fire. A journalist died after Israeli forces attacked a press tent hit in recent days. Journalists as well as children are in the line of fire. A journalist died after Israeli forces attacked a press tent near Nasser Hospital. Several others were injured. The video here shows a journalist burning as witnesses scramble to help. He is sitting in a chair, still moving, but either too dazed or too injured to try to escape the burning fabric around him. Israel's war on Gaza has killed hundreds of journalists, making it the deadliest ever conflict for media workers. They say Israel is targeting them in retaliation for reporting on the army's ongoing attacks on Palestinian civilians. Camille Nedelek, Al Jazeera.
Hani Mahmoud joining us from Gaza City. Hani, another bloody night for Palestinians. Absolutely harrowing images coming through overnight.
Doreen, it's getting very exhausting now to report at the same exact thing. More death and destruction. Unfortunately, there isn't anything other than this dominating the scene right now. And just as we prepare for this segment, the sound of heavy artillery is targeting more homes in the eastern part of Gaza City. That the target is the two densely populated neighborhoods, Zaytun and the Shijaiya neighborhood, where people, majority of them, are still trapped inside their tents or many of the residential buildings. Still standing, and standing doesn't mean here it's a proper shelter for people, but because they had no other choice, they stayed there. There's no other place to seek safety in across Gaza City. People are trapped there, or if they are leaving, they are within the line, in the line of fire of the heavy artillery, the heavy machine guns. We could hear it clearly from this point. Massive and huge explosion, and judging it from the sound, it's more of home demolition that is taking place along with the heavy artillery. But the worst of this is the ongoing continue to report about the death of journalists. One journalist from a local media channel, Palestine Today, was killed in a tent inside next to Nasser Medical Complex. This tent houses journalists working to cover the Israeli atrocities and massacres across the Gaza Strip, and particularly in the city of Khan Yunis. The harrowing image of a journalist inside the tent, burned alive and engulfed with the flames, and trying to flee from the horror of the bombs, but could not resist, could not leave the tent because of the massive fire. A local resident from the area was killed. It was sheltering inside or next to the tent that was attacked by the Israeli military. So far, the patterns that we're seeing in overnight and early hour of this morning, attacks in both Shujaiya and Zaytun neighborhood, central area, right after the mass evacuation ordered by the Israeli military, as well as Khan Yunis. And just in the past couple hours, a group of people were attacked by a drone missiles in Al-Nasr Street. One person reported killed. Earlier than this, in northern part of the strip, parents and their son were killed in an artillery attack.
Hani Mahmoud reporting for us from Gaza City. Hani, thank you so much. The Sudanese army is intensifying its efforts to retake areas outside Khartoum. But there's been more fighting as the paramilitary rapid support forces threaten to retake the capital after being pushed out in recent days. Heavy fighting in the city of Durman has killed at least 15 people on Sunday. The nearly 2-year-long conflict has displaced millions more. While the government of Khartoum and the Sudanese Red Crescent have launched a campaign to clear the streets of the capital as people return to their homes, they've begun removing dead bodies and explosives from public areas. Mohammed Val reports.
Until now, there is no way to know how many dead bodies are still lying in the streets. The grisly task of finding and removing them is ongoing since the Sudanese army retook the city last month from the paramilitary rapid support forces.
The beginning was tough for our team members, but as the safety conditions got better, we began to expand our operations. We worked in Durman and Bahari, and now we are working in Khartoum.
A joint operation between the Sudanese Red Crescent, the Governorate of Khartoum, and others has aims to make Khartoum an inhabitable city again.
Our strategy is to go into every area where peace and security have been restored, to start a special operation to sanitize the environment. We believe it's the #1 requirement for the return of the population.
The governor of the state of Khartoum is personally overseeing the work. Volunteers have joined the effort. The priority is given to the collection of harmful material such as unexploded munition, sharp metals and debris. They're also clearing the